Hey, how's it going, everybody? We had more RLCS action go down this weekend. We're going to be starting with Europe, as always, as we talk about Europe Open Qualifier number 2. We had our top 16 as these teams fight to try and lock in a major. There's conversation of, can KC do it back-to-back? Are we going to see better results out of the rookie and Drawley for BDS? What is going to happen with this top 4? Who is going to be answering the question of Johnny Boy's power rankings and more? And some pretty interesting results, to say the least. So we jump over and take a look at the top 16. As I told you guys last week, we saw some new faces across the board. Yukio and his team making it in. Hosky new with some new faces for some that may not be familiar. You're starting to get some pretty good teams around the board. You've also got on the solo roster that played upset in the qualifiers over K Corp. Tekos is him. Difference maker, man. And trying to find some consistency out of some of these other rosters. You know, Magnifico have been playing pretty dang well. First thing, if you guys do not remember, because Sa beat K Corp in the upper side of the bracket, it forces K Corp to assume that low seed. So they dropped down to lowers, which gave us a really fun first round matchup between K Corp and Gentlemates. It is a recreation of that grand final in Qualifier 1. K Corp won as expected in a close match, and their reward was to play the former world champs in Vitality, whom they also beat in 5. I think that's the best Vitality has looked so far this season. I don't think Vitality has had the same level of polish this year, because you guys got to understand, after winning literally every event since the Age of Zen became a thing, teams are now building to beat that team. So it is very tough for teams to stay at the top and continue to play that way when everybody else below you is trying to build and beat, and then you see that switch up. So Vitality is going to take some time to figure out what their next iteration is going to be with a new coach that, in Fairy Peak, who is very talented, has never coached before. So it may take a little bit for Vitality to get going. That's why I put more weight in teams like BDS. So again, I think you saw a lot of exciting things. We didn't have to wait until the quarterfinals to see our top dogs play each other. You got to see K Corp play Mates and Vitality. The only other one we didn't get to see them play against was BDS, because we got to see them in semis last time where they got reverse swept. BDS, not K Corp. So you got to see in the early rounds really high profile teams playing each other, but we wanted to know how that was going to equal out. Magnifico, rough go at it after going against K Corp. They lose to Redemption, but then bounce back. So they have 2 back-to-back top 8 performances. They're the only team outside of the top 4 French teams to do that. So Magnifico looking very, very solid. We've got a lot to discuss with them. We also talked about, based upon the results, the way things were playing out, based upon the stuff I was tweeting as well while I was watching, is that if the results continue the way they were, you are going to see the top 4 play each other in the quarterfinals, which opens up a massive opportunity. So you had BDS going up against Gentlemates and K Corp going up against Vitality in the first round of the quarterfinals, which is absolutely massive opportunities for all these other teams that play each other. So the winners between these 4 are going to launch themselves into the conversation when it comes to the rankings of what could be. Also, you're seeing some hiccups. Some teams like Sa, with the addition of Tekos, going 3-1. Oxygen, after having a really tough time qualifications, bouncing back, their only loss coming to BDS, even taking down Gentlemates. So we talk about the depth or inconsistency depending on what side of the conversation you're on, and it just goes to show that nothing is for free. You cannot take any of these series for granted. It is absolutely crucial to go in and put in those 3-1, 3-2 results so you get an advantageous situation when you get into the quarterfinals. With that in mind, we then jump down and look at the results for some of these other ones. While Greg and the guys do make it, they just barely miss out against the Gentlemates. Another close game 5. Gentlemates was kind of up and down. We talk about the ebbs and flows. I was not as sold on Gentlemates as I would like to be. Even the same thing for Vitality, if I'm being honest. Some familiar faces coming back. Team 3's defensive playstyle finally being punished by some of the more aggressive teams. Good to see Yukio and those guys come back. Some good potentials there. Unfortunately, the endpoint team that we want to see more consistently, still with the monkey's curse, it feels like. And then new faces coming in. I expected one of these teams, probably endpoint, to do a little bit better, but I expected Ueda, Caliente, or Hosky to be your 0-3 teams. Wasn't surprised in that regard, if I'm being completely honest. No disrespect, just those teams that are ranked like... And if you look at the tiers in EU, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Like, these are tier 1, tier 2 are some of the ones in the middle. Like, Vitality and Gentlemates, I think, are a step behind BDS and K Corp right now. And then you have a big pack of the teams that are like ranked 5 to 10, and then another pack below that. So again, no disrespect. I just think you're starting to see this hierarchy create even very early on in the season. Curious on what the teams that are kind of in this area are going to do for restructuring to make sure that they end up getting back into the conversation when it comes to split 2. Because there's only 2. You don't have much time in that 2-week trade window. When we go to the quarterfinals then, and we get into our top 8 conversations, and I'm trying to zoom this in so you guys can see my camera's in the way. I got to find a way to do this better for y'all in the future. We got those quarterfinal matchups. So K-Corp and Vitality, BDS and Gentlemates. The top 2 dogs, they make quick work of their opponents throughout the entire bracket as you look ahead until they come to this perfect cohesion of good Rocket League that we've been waiting to see. Big opportunities though. Sun, Magnifico, you can tell both teams had a firm understanding of like, this is a huge opportunity for us and making it into top 4 completely changes the narrative of what our season could be. To me, when you look at these rosters, they're going to look back at this series and making it into quarterfinals and be like, that was the difference maker for our entire season's cup. Like, without this result, we are in a completely different scenario and playing catch up so much. So I think there was a lot of nerves. The game wasn't the cleanest. There was definitely some double commits, some missed opportunities on shots and stuff, but I think both teams putting up a valiant attempt despite the pressure. Magnifico, I do think, is the better team. They end up moving on. K-Corp, Vitality, K-Corp, they spanked them. It was pretty rough for Vitality in that one. Vitality looked off, to say the least. And K-Corp just, after a certain point, you're like, make it stop. Like, they're already dead. Leave them alone kind of thing. I don't know what's going on with Vitality. I think, again, I mentioned, the adjustment period of being the top dog and now having to adjust to everybody who has built and gotten better. Gotta understand, they didn't make a roster change. So the only change they have is their coach. And I'm not saying I blame Fairy Peak, but a lot of work to catch up to the new iterations that you always see EU tend to have. Oxygen Redemption, I was happy to see Oxygen bounce back. There's been a lot of questions about that team of what they're going to get. Ixo gave us a very entertaining interview, to say the least, and did not pull some shots. So that boy let him go. And it's interesting conversation that's come with that. If you guys want to see me talk more about that, let me know down below. TLDR, though, without a full video on it. If casters are allowed to criticize players, players can criticize casters. Simple as that. I don't think there's much more to go into it. And then BDS and Gentlemates. BDS also making quick work of Gentlemates. I think the score lines were a little bit closer, but that BDS team is only going to get better and better and better. It is reminiscent of spring, and I mentioned this in our previous video when we talked about these guys. BDS as a team came in with a rookie. They went to the semifinals. They got reverse swept by the best team in the world, in my opinion. The better experience they have, the more time they get reps in, the better they're going to look. I think BDS is a clear number 2. They look absolutely incredible when they're on. Drawley's only going to get better. They're only going to get more comfortable. I always probably give K-Corp the head-to-head due to things outside of the game and some of the mentality things. I think K-Corp will always keep themselves in a series based upon the Rise Vatira combination. I think Monkey Moon has proven that mental can be a little bit here there. He's got to be the leader for this team. I'm curious on how that's going to go, but BDS is scary. BDS is very, very good. I predicted them to win the whole thing because I wanted the standings to be tied, but here we are. And then we got Grand Final. Great series. I don't think anybody was upset about these two going toe-to-toe. It was an absolute battle. I think playstyle-wise, BDS honestly looked a little bit cleaner, but K-Corp just finds ways to be creative. Their kickoff game is something that every team should be studying. They have set pieces in place, the way they do the cheat up kickoff, where it pinches to the right and there's a player already there to go a quick redirect, and it's working. They have a plan in mind. They are finally listening to the Johnny Boy 40-minute rant about kickoffs and things that they can do, and it is paying off. It is the little things that are within your control to change the fate of a game, and those are the things that are being the difference maker. They're still crazy talented. Atao he's great. I understand people want Zen on the team, but Atao's doing just fine. Casey's good. You even heard Rise after in his interview being like, you know what, man? You've been on 4 different teams going to 4 different majors. What's the next step? And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. Even if we have struggles, I have found my team, and I think it's for a right reason. I think across the board, it has been absolutely fantastic watching this team come together. They're really, really good. Like, KC is the real deal. I think K-Corp BDS are going to continue to be the ones battling. for a while. And I hope that we see Vitality and Mates not play second fiddle to those two. But at this rate, I'm not banking on it. I think those two are very, very good. So curious to see on how things play out in the future. They've got one more to go. So before we jump over to everything being closed out, let's take a look at the rankings just for everybody to kind of paint the picture of what this last season is going to be, or this last qualifier is going to be. If we take a look at the rankings, last qualifier is pretty spicy. Couple things of note. K-Corp winning back-to-back. Already guaranteed their spot. We already have K-Corp as the 1 seed and NA as the 2 seed. That is locked in unless some crazy results happen and we see them passed up. I'm pretty sure that's unlikely. Outside of that, you have a lot of teams kind of fighting for seeding, but the real conversation for EU is in here. You have 5 teams that are tied for 7th. Okay. A win is 4 points when it comes to the bracket differential. If you're talking about the difference between top 8, top 4, etc., usually 4 points is the equalizer. So these two teams having that 1 extra point is actually a very big deal, because we have seen both of these teams go to a quarterfinal as well as a semifinal. So if we see similar results, we could see a tiebreaker, which is an individual best of 7 to determine who goes to the major, which some teams might like because then they get to control their own fate in a single series. Some people may also just want to do it over the course of consistent results, but at least this way they get to control their own fate. Very similarly in EU to Space Station Gaming, where they in quarterfinals have played Gen G or G2, and that's why they're ranked lower. I could see quarterfinal matchups being the decider. For both these teams, a solid Swiss result is going to be so important to make sure that they get the lowest seed that they can to make sure they give themselves an advantage. Just like Magnifico playing SA or Oxygen playing Redemption, I much rather play one of those than a K-Corp, a BDS, a Gentlemates, a Vitality. That is going to be the big conversation going into the next week, which we will make sure when we get closer to that regional to do our playoff scenarios. Direct, as always, has put those all out in full, so we'll make sure to cover those the day before the matches so you guys know what you need to follow along with your team, so you know what needs to happen. So if you want to miss, or if you don't want to miss out on that stuff, as always, make sure you guys hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Links and everything will be listed down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.